DMs, what is the deepest secret lore that you'll never tell your players? Let us know in the comments below. I promise we won't tell. Every day in my setting, the sun rises, spawned anew from the plane of fire, and then extinguishes itself at the end of its journey in the plane of water. The elemental planes of existence bleed into the prime material plane, so you could feasibly walk far enough east in my world and end up in the plane of fire. Mine is that most of the suspicious NPCs are just people who are socially awkward and have no clue what's going on. Now, the party can question and roll for whatever they like. They will all be innocent and have no information for them. They just want to exist in the world, and will happily point an intimidating party in any direction that is furthest away from themselves. And the hag from the first town they went to, who made a deal with that one guard in order to save some people, did so because, well, she was lonely and wanted a friend. But as a hag, she didn't know how to ask. Nothing world-changing, just silly little things for now. The campaign is still ongoing, so who knows what's next. The party is the cause of the bad stuff happening in the world. The more they play, the more the world becomes unstable. More wild magic, more aberrations appear, more magical shenanigans happen, you know the whole shtick. It turns out they have a cursed item with them that they never bothered to cast Identify on, even though they cast Identify on just about every other magical thing they find. The item grants them decent bonuses and scales with use. So, the more they empower the item, whether on purpose or not, the more the world changes for the worse. What they think is happening? They assume the world or combat is getting more difficult because they're leveling up, going on harder missions, etc. In reality, the big bad evil guys are trying to find out what's causing the magic to become chaotic and stop it by draining magic from certain power spots. But the players always use those same power spots to buff themselves, leveling up after a long quest. I actually completely changed the campaign due to this, from a "go break this curse" short quest to "let's see how far they will take this cursed item" campaign-spanning event. All the campaigns I've ever run are all a part of the same universe. I may change some NPCs' names, but that's just the reincarnation of the character from the last campaign. Some NPCs go by vague names, so it's obvious who they are. Nobody has ever caught on to the Dwarven Blacksmith, who is basically a demigod in the universe at this point. They will never know that the blacksmith is really capable of crushing them all if he wanted. That is, until they probably steal something from them inevitably. Deep lore, the gods in the setting are not anthropomorphic, don't act like people, and are just pillars of virtue? Literal pillars that hold up the planes. If they step away to help some cleric on the material plane, they risk cracking. That's why they have to be contacted at super high levels via commune or use extraplanar creatures to communicate. Because Lathander isn't your friend. He is the sun. In my world, there was an ancient druid. A former group of mine, years ago, was supposed to have encountered him as a helpful NPC who gave them some useful information. He was also supposed to show up throughout the campaign, each time looking more and more natural. I don't really know how else to put it. His skin would turn greenish, he'd be covered in moss, have leaves growing out of his skin, and other horrors. The lore? Well, this human druid discovered a secret to immortality. He was becoming one with nature, drawing the essence of life straight out of the earth. But it was changing him, and not for the better. He was responsible for creating the entire forest where they began the campaign. Before that, it was a desolate wasteland of death, a blackened, ash-covered desert of decay. He revitalized the entire region with earth magic. And now, he was becoming the forest, a permanent fixture, eventually. As the campaign came to an end, they would have met him one last time, as a living tree. Sadly, they never got to meet him in the first place. They didn't check the mysterious grove in which he lived. Perhaps that's for the better, though. They weren't the type of players to be into body horror. Some of my descriptions of his appearance were less family-friendly than this post would suggest. The gods worshipped by the sentient species of the multiverse aren't truly gods at all. They're just very powerful mortals who continue to exist undying through the manipulation of the Aether, the natural magical energy that powers creation and binds the entire multiverse together. Aether flows constantly in one direction, cycling through the multiverse and filtering through all living and non-living things. It brings life and death, creation and destruction. The gods have found a way to isolate themselves from that natural flow in a limited capacity, and thus are undying. They do not suffer the effects of aging. There are true gods, however, gods whose job is to maintain the actual order of the multiverse on a cosmic level and maintain the balance of the Aether. They care not for much beneath them, not even those who would claim the title of a god. I'm not sure there's anything my players can never know, but I do know I can't let them near either of the planet's poles until I'm ready for some crazy stuff to happen. Experts in the calculations necessary to determine such things have found that Bortha, the planet, should have an equatorial circumference of 36,000 miles. But explorers looking to circumnavigate the globe have been unsuccessful, even those purporting to have traveled 40,000 miles or more. Why? Well, because the globe isn't quite a globe. Going east or west, it's as though the surface rolls back onto itself, yet it always has access to the sky. Going towards the poles, well, things get kinda weird. Magic becomes unpredictable, day-night cycles start to break down, and crossing the pole itself may transport you to the wrong side of the world. All the sides of the world meet at the poles, and they overlap at that point. If you projected the planet with a Mercator-style map, it'd just be an impossibly wide rectangle. They're at the beginning of a multiversal collapse, and if they fail, the consequences will be far more dire than just the world they live in losing all its magic. This is to explain the several pop culture references and characters they keep meeting. I don't believe they've picked up on any of them yet, but they've met alternate versions of Papyrus from Undertale, Captain Tennille from JoJo, Brocker and Sindri from Norse mythology, El Pozzolero from Ghost Recon Wildlands, Jax from Mortal Kombat, and the next one they'll likely meet will be Hazard from Overwatch. The reason the omniscient anthropomorphic personification of knowledge was willing to give them the MacGuffin in exchange for having a naive, younger version of himself as a follower is that he knows he is just an element in a story. The only time he will truly live and exist is when he is being viewed and interacted with by the party. Otherwise, he is just passing words. By having this version of himself follow them, he can be viewed and interacted with by the party, and therefore live, exist, and feel. That the largest region on the material plane is fabricated on a lie! The Elder Primordial of Dawn slowly went insane due to whispers from the abstract entity known as the Void. He believed that if he devoured existence, all that would be left is light. His son, the God of Hope, discovered his father's plan, bound him to an avatar, and slew him. The humans, however, had incorporated Dawn into their founding mythos and believed he was a benevolent god. So, the God of Hope let humanity continue believing it was true, to inspire hope, even if it was all false. The missing goddess of death incarnated as a mortal, but in doing so, lost much of her divine power. She is getting old. She doesn't have enough power to reascend to heaven. She will die, just as a mortal does, and it terrifies her. This won't be revealed because the campaign came to a premature end. I just like the irony of a death god fearing death. I played in a game where it was revealed to us in the last session that the custom magic immune race we were working for was, in fact, humans. From our world. They came on a submarine through a dimensional rift and, over time, scrapped their ship to create anti-magic items to sell to the local populace, giving them great power. And the spear in a lead box that hurt the user holding it, which could even kill gods through the con damage it did, was in fact a nuclear warhead. And I lugged it around as a weapon for half the campaign. Now your character has ultra turbo cancer. Just about everything. I made a 200 years ago, the gods rampaged across the land, resetting tech and magic knowledge back to a classic D&D setting. Nobody asked why or what the tech and magic power levels were. Everyone is playing a fighter type or dumped int. Not a single knowledge seeker among them. It's faith. People were relying on mortal technology and magic more and more, losing faith in the gods. But faith keeps the gods alive. I've got a Gouge Machine City plotline. If they grab the right stuff, the Artificer class and Gunslinger class open up to them, and anyone they share it with, slowly spreading the knowledge across the land. But they have to study it. I've also got a book that any caster can study to unlock critical roles, Dunamancy. Again, share the book or talk with others to spread the knowledge of the School of Magic. Basically, they can recover more than half of the knowledge, but not the attitude of the average citizen, that caused the apocalypse. There are a few elements, as this is not the first campaign in this world. Here's a bit of a setup. There's a classic Kingdom of the Dead up north, ruled by your standard Dead King. Trademarked. Most groups assume the king is evil and possibly the big bad evil guy. But, in fact, he really just wants to keep things as they are. He himself is unable to change and generally doesn't mess with things outside of his domain unless you are trying to undermine him. Somewhat of a hint number 1. The basically uncontested superpower of the continent is a theocracy created around a cult of 5 very hands-on gods. Those gods communicate regularly with the priests, perform miracles, and sometimes even join battles. That is very different from the gods of other places, who are much less involved. This was hint number 2, by the way. Every decade or so, the 5 gods request a crusade. Strongest fighters, adventurers, etc. are sent to end the threat of the dead king in the north. That is, of course, propped up by enough propaganda to rival 1984. Usually, the crusade fails, and most, if not all, die there and join the ranks of the undead. Hint number 3. The secret? The 5 gods are not actually gods. They actually used to be adventurers who discovered that if you are strong enough, level 20 plus, in out-of-game terms, of course, you ascend and become immortal demigods. Well, they scrubbed that knowledge, created a cult around themselves, and are using the Crusades to kill off high-level adventurers who could potentially ascend as they did. None of the gods, as the PCs understand them, actually exist. There's a massive cosmic force at the center of the multiverse that dispenses power without discretion. The pantheon of gods was created by their respective churches to make sense of the chaos. The force possesses no intelligence, no discretion, and only reacts to cosmic stimuli, much like a single-cell organism. Anyone who looks upon it sees it as a shifting cosmic horror that defies comprehension. Well, my personal favorite was when I made my players fight an 8-foot-tall goose. They killed it, okay. Then, a few sessions later, they discovered the same town had another one. Well, they killed that one too, never came back, and never once wondered why the town had 2 giant gooses, or why none of the townsfolk cared. They were supposed to investigate it, only to realize those weren't full grown. There was a 12-foot-tall goose laying eggs that would hatch into these geese. Gooses? Kinda silly, but, I love it. One of the party's nearest and dearest NPCs, who went back in time to help them and seemingly never returned, ended up ascending to become a god. A god who also would set in motion that NPC going back in time, effectively making a time loop. Pretty much every god in my setting got their divinity completely by accident. They are just winging it as they go. None of them want to admit it either. Some clerics know the secret, but most don't. But all are empowered mostly out of, "I screwed up, you seem semi-competent, please fix my mess, please!" The common folk are completely unaware. Now this might eventually come up, or might just remain a background element. Hey everyone, Brian Von VA checking in after the vid. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, ring that bell, and let us know in the comments below. What is the deepest secret lore that you'll never tell your players? Again, I promise we won't tell. And if you ever want early access to videos or to support the channel further, make sure to join our membership program. You get early access to vids and maybe a little bit more later. We love you all. See you next time. Toodaloo for now.